If you're anything like me, then you probably have a love-hate relationship with reading. You like the idea of reading, but when it comes time to grabbing that book, sitting down and reading those pages, suddenly it becomes impossible. Maybe you're even someone who reading just isn't for me. You just weren't born to be a reader. But we all know deep down that if you don't read, you're missing out on decades and decades of knowledge and insight from some of the highest and smartest people on the planet. But how do non-readers actually read books, enjoy them, and learn from them? Well, here are 5 tips to do exactly that. The first tip is just start small. Don't jump into the deep end of reading by trying to read a book a week like I did. Now it sounds great, but at its core it's a lot harder than you think. So do yourself a favor and set your standards as low as possible. I'm talking 10 minutes a day or even 1 page a day. Set them as low as possible, but choose whatever works for you. Now when you choose it, you've got to realize that it's just as easy to do it as it is to not do it. So make sure when you set it up, set it easy enough so that you'll actually do it every day. Tip number 2 is to stop reading books you think you should read and start reading books you actually enjoy. Now this sounds silly, but I got caught up in this trap when I first started reading self-improvement books. Within the self-improvement genre, there are a couple of staple books that everyone recommends. And one of those books is Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a great book, but it's also a book filled with 500 pages of research findings, which can be really hard to digest. So the key here is to find a book, it's easy to read, and something that you enjoy. Once you've built the habit of reading, then you can jump into the more complex books. But for now, again, do yourself a favor, find easy to read books and books that are actually enjoyable. Now the third tip is to read first, reward second. It's so easy to check social media just one more time before starting that book. With the amount of addictive content online, one more YouTube video can easily suck you into the rabbit hole of suggestions and clickbait videos. The key here is to read first before going online, before your brain is zapped by the mindless content. A great way to do this is by reading first thing in the morning, which brings me to my next point, setting a dedicated reading time. This is a great way to build reading as a habit. What I do is I set aside 30 to 40 minutes first thing in the morning before everyone wakes up. I schedule it into my calendar as if it was an important meeting, and that way it becomes a priority and it gets done. It also reminds me when to pick up that book and start reading, which is also helpful. I schedule this reading time for the morning, first thing, because it's a time where there's less distractions, and it's also a great time because work stress hasn't piled up yet and your mind hasn't been zapped by mindless content. So set a dedicated reading time and put it in your calendar. Now my final tip is to try audiobooks. Now for me, nothing quite beats the smell and the texture of a physical book in my hands. But sometimes it's inconvenient to carry around a book, and I understand that many people prefer listening to a book rather than reading one. The other thing about audiobooks is that you can actually listen to one whilst doing chores or other physical activities like exercise. One of the things I like to do is pair it up with chores. Now I'm not a big fan of doing the dishes like most people, but when it's paired with a good book, a good audiobook, it actually makes it enjoyable. So the next time you've got to do the dishes, download an audiobook, chuck it on and give it a try. Now I know of 2 apps that I use for audiobooks. The first one is Audible and the second one is called Libby, and that connects to your local library, and then you can use that app to listen to audiobooks through your library. I hope you found these tips as useful as I'm currently finding them. The thing with reading is it really isn't that hard. All you're doing is just reading words off a piece of paper. The real challenge is getting through those distractions. So block out those distractions, try one of these tips and let me know how it goes. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like. If you like these videos in general, consider subscribing. For now, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.